is it time to cancel Brexit? Just admit we can't do it. It broke David Cameron, and now it's breaking Theresa May. She had to call off the vote on her so-called deal after being told just about everyone had not a cat in hell's chance of getting through Parliament. So this was a very, very bad moment.
Does this House want to deliver Brexit? And a clear message from the SNP, but if the House does it want to do so through reaching an agreement with the EU? If the answer is yes, and I believe that is the answer of the majority of this House, then we all have to ask ourselves whether we're prepared to make a compromise.
With impeccable timing, the European Court of Justice yesterday ruled that we can still put the brakes on the whole process. If the UK decides it doesn't want to leave after all, the other countries can't force us to leave. So after 2 years of chaotic negotiations have got us precisely nowhere, is it time now to admit this is simply beyond us? We're told hard Brexit would be a disaster and we can't get a deal, so we are just going to have to stay and just not mention the whole episode ever again. Owen, is that what we have to do now? Just say, look, we wish this hadn't happened.
It's not as straightforward as that, unfortunately. Look, I campaigned for Remain. I have problems with the EU in its current form, but I thought on balance we should stay and reform it. And I didn't like the referendum result. I didn't like the way the Leave campaign was run in terms of the way they spoke about immigrants and refugees in particular. But I grew up in a Leave area, and people I grew up with voted to leave. And I spend a lot of time going to Leave communities, like Mansfield, like Blackpool. And people there say, why haven't we left yet? We voted to leave 2.5 years ago. Now, I don't agree with them, but I do know that you can't, if there was going to be a way of stopping Brexit, it would have to be via a second referendum. My worry about a second referendum, it might end up being the only option left standing, but it would be so bitter and divisive. And I worry about the divisions already unleashed by the last referendum. But if we may end up in the situation where it's the only one standing.
What if you have a second referendum and people who voted Brexit in Mansfield, for example, say, we're not taking part. We've had a referendum.
Well, that is
just boycott it.
That is a concern. And what would the question be? And as I said, it might end up being the only option left standing. But let's not pretend that's an easy option.
Well, Ann's got an option, which is what we just go.
We go, and I don't use the term crash out either, which is a very prejudicial term. We go. We voted to go 2 years ago. We've had 2 years to prepare. The Treasury has been doing work on preparing for going without. Individual businesses have. There's been a lot of stockpiling and all the rest of it.
Stockpiling?
Yeah, so things like spare parts, just that simple. So, no, Owen, I didn't interrupt you.
Go on,
okay?
Go on, carry on.
He's allowed to interrupt.
Yeah, but I didn't interrupt him.
No, that's fine.
We heard what he had to say. Just give me the same courtesy.
Okay, that's fine.
So what I feel very strongly is I feel that there has been a very serious and successful attempt to wear us down. Just so that we lose the will to live every time.
By the EU, you mean?
Every time we hear the word Brexit. And that
it's happened, judging by the applause.
And the Remain faction has cottoned on to that. So if we get worn down, if we can't get a deal, then just call the whole thing off. No, then go without a deal.
Can I ask you one question, Anne?
Yes.
Right? I won't bother you with the predictions of apocalypse if we leave without a deal.
Oh, we've heard them before.
All right, OK. What I'm going to say to you, and I'm going to go to Daniel in this in a second, is if we leave without a deal, we become a separate jurisdiction to the EU.
Yep.
And you must have a border in Ireland.
Yep.
How do you get round that?
By having a soft border in Ireland. I mean, there is already a border. There is a legally recognised defining line between the south, which will still be in the EU, and the north, which is part of the United Kingdom. There is already a border. That is not the question. The question is, how far do you enforce that
border? Exactly.
And how do you enforce it?
And how do you do that?
And do you enforce it with technology, for example, when it comes to customs? What are you actually going to do? Now, there's actually a very successful soft border that operates between, and I've seen it in action, between Spain and Gibraltar, where they go to work in each other's countries.
They're both in the EU?
Yeah, hang on. Tens of thousands of them going, but there's actually a border.
Yeah, but...
Listen!
Okay.
Tens of thousands.
OK, all right.
They're on my side. Just
OK, but I want to bring Daniel in because he's
Irish. Yeah, I want to hear from the Irish as well, but can the English just have a quick say? And tens of thousands of them each day cross to live and to work, in each other's jurisdictions. It's perfectly possible.
All right. So Daniel, is that possible that you're in the EU because you're Irish, that the UK does what Anne suggests, which is just, I won't say crash out, we just leave, and you have a border that you go backwards and forwards over that thing? What, would you be able to have a soft border?
Yeah, you could go backwards.
Well, of course you could go backwards and forwards. There's no doubt, physically it's absolutely possible.
But what if you decide to smuggle 1,000 cigarettes a day?
This is not this wouldn't be my issue. Psychologically, a border between the south of Ireland and the north of Ireland is a lot more than smuggling cigarettes. If you lived either north or south of the border, every time I crossed that border, when the Troubles were there, I was nervous. And I know you might say, well, why you don't need to go back to that. It's very hard to get rid of that feeling, what a border, meant or what it made you feel. And honestly, I would hate to see the border. I think it would be a step back in the minds of so many people. I mean, in the future, I suppose people will forget about that. But there's a lot of people that lived through the Troubles that will...
Is that really a reason for keeping the whole UK in Europe?
I wouldn't. I'm not saying we should keep the UK in Europe. If the people here voted, which they did vote. Now, I would say on such a monumental vote, there should have been a greater majority demanded.
Okay.
To let such a huge thing happen.
Go on. So, Owen, can I just lead this slightly by saying to you, all right, we've talked about crashing out, I'm not going to say, leaving, hard Brexit. The other option is what I said at the very start, Owen, which is that we just say, we haven't managed to get clear of this thing. It is Hotel California. We tried to check out and we can't leave.
Well, that would have to be a second referendum to decide.
No, it isn't. It's just we haven't done it.
No. Well, you can't cancel a referendum result like that, and it would cause fatal trust, lack of trust. No, it would undermine fatally people's trust in democracy. But just quickly on, the Northern Ireland peace process is sacred. Thousands died in that conflict, including in this country. And the idea, given, one of the linchpins of that peace process, is to get rid of that border. The idea we would destabilise the Northern Ireland peace process is frightening, let alone the tariffs imposed. But just quickly, this is the critical point, which we've not even mentioned. We don't even have a functioning government anymore. The one thing you can say about Theresa May is everything she promises turns out not to be true. She said there'd be no election, there was. She said that a bad deal was better than no deal. She came back with a bad deal. And then she says, 100%, this deal's going to Parliament, it'll get voted on, there's nothing else that can happen, then she pulls it at the last minute.
Well,
how are we ever going to... We don't have a functioning government or prime minister.
Well, that may be, that's almost a collateral, isn't it?